Hello, I am Lauren Rutgerson, and this is my presentation on Chapter 21 from American Yawp. This chapter was titled World War I and its Aftermath. So in this chapter, it just discusses sort of the lead up to World War I, what occurred during World War I, and how America had participated, and some of what came afterwards. So for World War I, it was initially a war fought predominantly in Europe. There were a few events that caused the catalyst of what happened and brought a bunch of different countries that had different alliances to war with each other. It was very complicated working it out at first, but it mostly was seen as a European war, not really an American issue. We also didn't really have a military force to commit and to, add to these fights. Woodrow Wilson was president during the time, and though he tried to stay neutral, several events drove him to, join and make, the United States participate in this war. A few things were the Germans were trying to ally with Mexico, and there was a message that was intercepted by British spies referring to what Mexico should do in the event that America, moves and joins the war efforts in Europe. They told Mexico that if they fought against America, that the Germans would help them, and that they would award them several states, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, for their efforts. The Mexicans declined, but it sparked outrage amongst Americans, though they were divided about their decision of whether or not to join the war. This was one of the things that tipped them over the edge into, gaining the approval that they needed in government. So going into it, there was a lot of, important things that happened. They expanded our military forces. They created a lot of bases. The infrastructure for the government and the military forces grew, became more complex and more effective. So they could deploy troops into Europe to help, fight with the Allies. In going over there were a lot of different, ethnicities. Black Americans were some of the ethnicities that went over there. Women were actually more involved. They had started working in factories for production here. So it wasn't just, white American men that were being involved. There were other, other races and other genders. Women stepped into even more working roles than they had originally done. They were stepping into healthcare roles and administrative roles to kind of free up the men for fighting. The reasoning that they gave for joining the war wasn't just, being provoked. Woodrow Wilson claimed to be desiring to bring democracy to the world, to bring more freedom. Monarchies were becoming less effective and falling, and he felt that, democracy should be the ruling force, and he wanted America to have a say. So we became a world power by building our military and going over there and joining World War I. It was an opportunity for him to, decide how things were governed, like the waterways, economics. It advanced our world economic power immensely during that time. So during the peace talks, when the war finally did end, and Germany agreed to come and meet and discuss peace, Woodrow Wilson, that's when he presented his ideas and created helped facilitate creating the League of Nations, which America did not join, despite him wanting us to be a part of that. I missed a little bit of a part that I want to go back to. So when we joined the war, it expanded our government here and expanded government control. That was an important aspect of what happened in the government then. By expanding their control, they were controlling communication, they were controlling food production, all in the effort to help facilitate the war. So during this time, government was growing, becoming more controlling, and wanting to spread its message across the world. Thus the peace talks, thus Woodrow Wilson coming and bringing his ideas to the table. Once the war ended, though, everybody, on their endeavor to go home, spread the Spanish flu pandemic. The Spanish flu pandemic was devastating to the world. It was even more people died during that pandemic than the actual war itself. So with everybody traveling all over the world and heading home, they brought all these diseases to every corner, and just everyone was suffering from this disease. There was no cure. It was a virus. But they did their best to, try to mitigate the issues. But all these concentrated groups of people, the military, traveling together, just made it spread like wildfire. Lots of businesses closed at the time. Public meeting halls were closed as well. And it was a dark time. So after the war, when the African Americans returned from service, they had been segregated during the war and kept separate from, white Americans who were fighting. Despite, being Americans and being out there and fighting for the same effort, they thought when they came home that they would be afforded more respect and freedoms and more equality, not freedoms, but more equality and liberty, and they were not. W.E. Du Bois was a big speaker of the time and a big advocate for African American rights, and stating, that he, encouraged Black Americans to go and fight in this war. And so, he continued to help and speak up for them afterwards and state, all of the wrongs that he saw being happening. So this was a very transformative time in American history. It seems like every one we've covered so far has been. I thought this one was really fascinating with the Spanish flu information. Reading the one letter from the Native American woman writing to her friend was especially eye-opening, just seeing the similarities between that pandemic and the COVID pandemic, even though less people died. And it probably would have, it likely would have been just as bad if we didn't have any medical interventions like we do now. But just seeing the parallels to, that time to this time and what we've experienced recently was fascinating. And just seeing it through the eyes of that Native American woman, that nurse, was really enlightening. So that was my presentation on chapter 21. Thank you very much. Good night.